This video is for beginning astrophotographers who need really good polar alignment and can't see Polaris from their shooting location. I made this video because with the COVID-19 stay-at-home thing, which is why I have this Einstein on acid haircut, I need to be able to take photos from my porch without being able to go to the park where I normally go because it's closed. Drift alignment was going to be my only solution because this was my view of Polaris. Drift alignment was it for me. The problem was I had tried a number of times before and had nothing but massive failure. As it turned out, it was because I had no idea what the expected result of moving the mount controls would be in terms of the magnitude of the move and how much reaction you could expect. And I was totally unaware of how long the process was going to take and how long it would take to see the results of your adjustments. And this dual layer of uncertainty made it initially impossible for me to figure out why I couldn't get it to work. So I've decided to make the video I wish I could have watched back then to give me all the right information and no clutter. I'm Bill the Sky Guy, and this is PHD2 drift alignment if you've never used it before with a DJ. Well, I'm stuck at home for what turned out to be 2.5 months, and I had to make it work. So I looked on YouTube, and I found a video called Polar Alignment Without Polaris, which seemed like it was going to be perfect. And I looked on the video, and the guy showed you how you could get good polar alignment using a combination of a smartphone app and the drift alignment routine in PHD2. Finally, I'd actually seen how this works, and that was huge. But the problem was that this guy's mount was pretty close to polar aligned already. And I didn't really have that luxury since I had to set up from scratch each time I was going to shoot. I wanted to make it work from not very closely aligned at all. And since that was going to be my world for the next however many months, I had to figure it out. So I looked at a couple of more PHD2 drift aligned videos and picked up some good tips. The most successful one was, in order to do this well and get predictable results, you have to be systematic about your approach and methodology. A number of things that you do with this method will actually work backwards from the way you expect if you change the way you do things, and you'll end up getting confused. So you need to be consistent about some choices that you make in the procedure that are essentially arbitrary choices. You just need to be consistent about them. Remember, drift alignment is very accurate, so it stands to reason at some point tiny changes will have to be made to achieve that precision. The need for consistency in your process is greatly aided by taking advantage of certain machines, both hardware and software. So I'll take a moment to detail my setup that will help you with consistency. First, there's the mount itself, which is under control by a computer of some kind. The ASCOM method for talking to all of our astro stuff is really good. If you've never heard of it, ASCOM is a computer software environment that's capable of communicating across a wide variety of astronomy devices, from the obvious stuff like cameras and mounts all the way to filter wheels, motorized focusers, observatory domes and rotators, even weather stations and cloud monitors. Each equipment manufacturer then writes a piece of ASCOM-compliant driver software for their gear, and then lots of different software can talk to lots of different hardware with a lot less pain than there used to be. Be aware that the ASCOM driver is not the same driver as the manufacturer's normal driver. You would get this as an additional download and have both installed. The one piece of gear to absolutely have under ASCOM control is your mount for the improved guiding that can take place that way. ASCOM runs only on Windows right now, although there is a movement afoot to make it work natively on a Mac. You need a guide camera looking through its own scope or a main scope via an off-axis guider. On the software side of things, I run 3 programs while I'm getting this all together. PHD2, of course, connected to the guide cam and mount via USB for the camera and ASCOM for the mount. I have a sky program like Stellarium or Starry Night, Sky Safari or whatever that's capable of talking directly to the mount so it can show you where it thinks the telescope is. And then, of course, your main camera imaging program, I'm using Sequence Generator Pro, and those 3 tools should get you the capability that you need to wrangle this process into submission. So let's talk about the early steps. The whole point of this process is to get good photos, right? So there are a couple of things you can do that can help with the overall process and get you better pics. The early steps can be made less stressful by having a properly aligned finder scope besides the guide scope on your telescope. First of all, level your mount. It's very important for drift-align to have a level mount. So take the time to get that before you proceed. You also need to get the mount roughly aligned with the sky before you start drift-align. So start up your mount in the start position, whatever that is. My Losmandy mount starts with what they call counterweight down, with the weights down and the telescope pointing more or less at Polaris. Make sure your mount knows its longitude and latitude by entering the numbers manually into the hand controller, if you have to. Give it the exact day and time to the second from your cell phone. Now, tell the mount to go to a bright star that might be peeking through the dusk. Lately, it's been Sirius or Procyon for me. And once the telescope is finished slewing there, it won't be in your main camera unless you're really lucky because your polar alignment is really weak right now. Nevertheless, the mount thinks it's pointing at your selected star. So look in the finder scope, and without using the mount's hand control, adjust the azimuth and altitude controls on your mount to try and move that star into the center of the finder, and then hopefully it'll be in your main camera somewhere. Now, if you're so far off that you don't even see the star in the finder at all, don't be afraid to get down there and wiggle the tripod legs around until you're getting it a little closer. Once you've got it at the center of the finder, then go to your main imaging app and start the frame and focus routine where it takes a series of exposures. And hopefully you'll see your star in there. The exposure, if you're taking it during dusk, will be pretty short, like a tenth of a second. You should also be roughly in focus at this point. Now, use the hand control to slowly move the star to the center of your imaging camera's screen. Take a moment to memorize which hand controller button moves things in the direction of the camera frame, or make yourself a little diagram. Camera orientation is a factor here, by the way. If you change it, the buttons won't move this stuff the same way the next time. Sequencer Generator Pro has crosshairs, so turn them on, and using the hand controller, get that star right in the center. Now go to your mount and update the alignment on the hand controller. The mount should be tracking the sky at this point. Okay, now pull up PHD2 and start looping exposures from your guide cam. Hopefully the star is going to be in there somewhere since it has a wider field of view than the main cam. If it's necessary, adjust the screws on your guide scope to get the selected star in the center of the frame as exactly as you can. I can't find any way to have crosshairs show up in PHD2, so do the best you can. You might have to turn up the brightness slider on the screen some to see the edge of your camera's frame. There are huge benefits from having your guide camera pointed exactly the same direction as your main scope. Okay, so let's get to it. Here's the outline of the basic plan, so you have an understanding of how this is all going to go. You're going to visit a couple of special places in the sky and make a series of smaller and smaller adjustments to your mount's pointing using the mount controls, not the hand controller. Spot number 1 in the sky is the intersection of the meridian and the celestial equator. We use this spot for adjusting the mount's east-west pointing, which is called azimuth. We will find a star near this point, and then using the drift align tool in PHD2, we'll make a series of smaller and smaller adjustments to the amounts east-west pointing until PHD2 shows us that we're good on the graph. Then we're going to slew the scope in right ascension only to a spot reasonably low to the horizon on the east or the west, whichever's more convenient to you from your location. And then we're going to adjust the mount's up and down control, the altitude control, until PHD says that we're good. Now we're going to go back to the original spot and touch up the azimuth because the altitude adjustment has just distorted our earlier setting by a small amount. So if you made any significant adjustments on the second trip to that azimuth position, now you have to go back again to the altitude position a second time and do a little touch up on that as well. If you do a good job with the adjustments, I've never had to do more than 2 pairs of these adjustments to get really accurate guiding. Then, once you've done that, and the graph is giving you good results, we're going to go to a different tool in PHD2 called the PHD2 Guiding Assistant Tool. Now, this entire procedure, the fastest I've ever been able to do it is 40 minutes. The reason why this takes so long is because it can take up to 2 to 3 minutes of guiding to get your result from the graph to let you know if that you really are aligned to this degree. So to combat the boredom, I'm going to DJ some of the music I've recorded over the years in my real job as a music recording engineer at recording studios. So let's get aligned.
Okay, we are out under the stars. My apologies for all the street noise in the background. I live near a busy street, and I'm just using the laptop mic to record. Let's see if we can get this done now. Alright, so I've got my camera connected to PHD2. I've got Starry Night 8. I've gone up and parked the scope up in this part of the sky up here, just above the celestial equator, just to the right of the meridian. I like to use this quadrant right here for my initial alignment for azimuth. So I've got a star there, and we're going to we'll switch over to PHD. And wow, that's what you'd call a target-rich environment. So you want to pick a star. Now, why wouldn't I pick this star right here? Well, see, the problem is that's a peak value of 255, and that's clipped. So you're not going to get a good center of your star there. And what is that? A cloud? Terrific, just as I start recording. What we want to do is we want to find a star that gets as close to 255 as we can without ever getting there. So something in the low 200s would be perfect. What do we have? Something here. I'm going to do this in real time, which means unless I really, really need to, I won't be editing out the time it takes to do these drift segments, because the whole idea is to get an idea of just exactly how long this takes in order to get your results together, which is one of the things that led me to complete and total failure the first, 6 times I tried to do this. Let's try that star. Well, that one looks about right. Now, I've got this on 1.5 seconds exposure. You could go to a little slower exposure if you're up against the wall there, and that would make that star a little bit dimmer. Or you could also go and lessen the sensitivity of your camera, which you can do here. Click the brain, go to camera, and then you can select your camera gain if it's supported. And I've got mine kind of cranked up because that's seems to be the way it goes. When we get to the parts where you really have to let it run for a while, I'm going to turn it over to DJ Nebulous, who's going to play some music that I recorded during my career as a audio recording engineer. So I hope you like that music. All right, so the first thing, if we can get some clear sky here, is to go up and get the Drift Align tool out of Tools. The Drift Align. Now, this is already connected to the mount, so it knows where we are. These boxes here show us where our current position is. I generally don't let other programs slew the telescope until they've proven that I can trust them. Because I've had so many runaways, and if you have to rush out and turn the power off to the scope because it's about ready to crash into the tripod legs, well, that just ruins your whole night. So I generally just use the mount controls to manually move the scope where I want it to go using the Gemini controller for the Losm mount. Now, I have not cheated. I have a PoleMaster, but it's not on the scope. I can't really see the North Star from where my scope is. I'm just going to see what happens. All right, so let's hit drift and see just exactly how far off I am. It says calibrate. Yeah, you have to do that. We're going to put this away. The way to calibrate is you hold the shift key down and click on the guiding button. You have to be guiding. And what calibration is, it puts the telescope through a series of steps, moving it west and east and north and south. And it figures out how much of a burst of electricity to the motor causes how much of a movement in the guide can. And so it goes through and makes this calibration about how to move your mount in a predictable way. A lot of times when it's done doing this, it'll give you some spurious errors that, you know, your mount is not orthogonal, or you've got this kind of an error, or you've got some flexure or something like that. There's a place where you can check, assume that the mount is orthogonal, which means that your RA and your deck are 90 degrees away from each other, which is usually a pretty good bet unless your mount is particularly bad. Okay, doing the east steps now. There's a lot of moisture in the air. I'm at sea level. I mean, literally, when I type in the elevation into my hand controller, it's single digits. 2. Okay, so now we're guiding. That means it completed, and it didn't complain about anything. That's good. I hate it when it complains. All right, now we're going to do drift line. Amazing, isn't it? Okay, you know, -6, I'm really not up that close to that point. I'm going to move the telescope a little bit. We're going to go back here, and then, yeah, see how much it's drifted over there? I'm going to just nudge this thing. Yeah, I'm going to lose my star, and it's going to complain. It always complains. All right, here's something. How about that star? Do we like that star? Maybe that's just a little macho. That's what I'm talking about. We're up there, and we are going to clear the display and drift. We're just going to watch which way this line goes. Oh, here's something you can do. The blue line for RA has no bearing on what we're trying to get done here. So I always change the color to like black just for this portion of it, just to get rid of it. The only line we're dealing with here is the red line, the deck line, because after all, it is the declination drift method. This actually isn't as bad as it is sometimes. I got pretty lucky here. But obviously, we're nowhere close. Sometimes this pixels of errors will be up in 1 or 2,000 pixel errors. So at this point, if you've never done this before, you have to hit the adjust button, and now you have to just make a guess. You want to know which way you turn your knob on your mount makes the line go which way. So I am just going to make a guess. So I'm going to go turn it. This is an adjustment you can make. You really need to see the difference that you make. So one complete wrist movement of turn is usually where I go. Or if I'm in the 2000s, maybe I'll try 2. So I'm going over to the mount. And that was one great big turn. As you saw the star move there. So I've lost my star. I'm going to get it back. Click there. And now we go drift again. It'll clear the display. And it'll start doing another run. And we got to see whether or not I moved it in the right direction. So Now it's important to remember which way you turn the knob. So clockwise, counterclockwise. So that was a clockwise turn for me. We're going to let it go about the same amount. We're still way off, but we got to make sure we're less than 650, which was the number of pixels that we were off before. And that seems reasonable, yes. So I'm going to turn it that much again. So you hit adjust, going over the scope, another big turn. I did two that time, like one big turn and one little turn. And we're going to hit drift again. Now the magenta circle, the smaller this thing gets, the better off you are. So it gives it a little time. Now at this point, early in this game, it's good to have short exposure times. You know, bright stars with short exposure times, because you get more readings in a shorter amount of time. You won't believe how long this takes. Like I said earlier, I think the quickest I've ever gotten it done is 40 minutes. I mean, to get it really right. So, okay, looks like I made an improvement. We went from 480 pixel error to the low 315s, and it's definitely getting flatter. So we're headed in the right direction. So I got lucky. So now I'd be writing down on my piece of paper or in my phone, I'd be writing, turning the west knob on the mount clockwise makes the red line go up. All right, let's do it again. Now, the closer you get, the longer you have to let it run. And hit drift again. The display clears. It picks another star on its own if I didn't. And we are definitely headed in the right direction. You know, when you see all these points and you see it going up and down like this, you wonder what the hell your mount's doing. You just have to remember that it is very, very sensitive. It's trying to keep a star, which is, you know, a little bit spready because of the atmosphere. It's trying to keep it on 1 pixel in the array of pixels on your camera. And because of atmospheric seeing and the fact that you're only shooting at 1 second, you would never guide at 1 second because you're just chasing the atmosphere at that point. You can get some really spurious, bizarre readings, like what happened here. Is this really my mount, or did we just lose the star a little bit with some moisture in the atmosphere? Well, it's a little hard to tell. If you get like some really obviously deviant reading early in the graph, that'll pollute the graph for a long time. You can always hit clear and just start the graph over, and maybe you won't end up with that spurious event in there. All right, so we're definitely making an improvement. We're just going to keep improving it. Hit adjust, go to the knob. That was another fairly decent turn of the wrist since we're still getting in the neighborhood here. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Okay. At least it's not cold. All right, and it's very, you can't believe the pixel amount here at the early stages of the game. You really need at least 10 or 15 data points to get some kind of an average. It's averaging all of these out, and the line is just an average of all the various points. Okay, still down, 120 pixels. All right, so now I'm not going to turn the knob on the mount quite so much this time. I'm going to give this just sort of enough turn to know that I've turned it, and a little bit more than that. And we're just going to sneak up on this thing from below. So adjust, knob, drift. Okay, we're not believing anything until it's run for a while. As encouraging as that looked right there. Still above 100. We're going to let it go. Yeah, no, that looks pretty good. You know, sometimes when the first reading is a little whacked, sometimes it won't start here at the origin. It'll be low or it'll be high, and that doesn't really matter. The fact that it doesn't really start right on the center line, it's the flatness of the red line that counts. Okay, getting a little crazy there. But nevertheless, we can probably say that this definitely still needs to come up. So hit the adjust button. Don't forget to do that, by the way, it complains. Well, you saw that adjustment. Okay, drifting again. I may have overcooked it a little that time. We'll just see. Well, that's encouraging. Now, the conventional wisdom, from what I can tell, is when you're actually guiding for exposures, you really shouldn't be exposing any quicker than 2 seconds. And some people go out as far as 4 seconds. Because otherwise, the seeing changes, your star wiggles a little bit. The mount ends up trying to chase this thing all over the pixel map, and you end up just getting a whole bunch of weird looking stars because the mount is chasing the seeing, not actually the movement of the star. So as you'll see later, when you get this together, there's a tool you can use called the Guiding Assistant, which will suggest settings for your mount based on what it was you did tonight. And sometimes that can be really, really good, especially if your mount is not heavily loaded. Okay, so where are we here? 83 pixels. Well, not too bad, but still clearly need to go more in the same direction. So let's hit adjust. Another turn clockwise. And let's see how we did. Yeah, don't believe what you read. That was a pretty healthy turn, though. We'll see where it comes out. I do like the idea of sneaking up on it from the same direction and not overshooting, because in any system of gears, especially this one, there's a reasonable amount of play, backlash in the gears. And once you're sneaking up on it, it really is good if you don't have to reverse your direction. Because by the time you're that close, the amount of turn that you're turning the knob is so little. As you can see, we're getting there. The magenta circle over here inside the green box, that's nice. And the closer you get, the more data points you need in order to be sure that you've got it and that the reading that you're getting is meaningful. That was my computer bag falling on the ground. Okay, 39 pixels. We are in the hood. All right, adjust. Okay, this is going to be a small adjustment. All right, I turned that knob enough so that I could tell that I had turned it, and then a little bit more, and let's see what happens. You'll get a feeling for how much to turn the knobs after you've done this a couple of times. When you get down to the point where you're trying to get it down into single digits and you're at 12, you'll turn the knob and you won't even be sure that you've even turned it. I mean, it's the tiniest little adjustment. I also have a Skywatcher EQ6R Pro, and the controls for doing this kind of thing on there are a lot coarser than the ones on the Losmandy, and boy, you really, really have to be careful about how much you turn those knobs. And of course, it's a push-pull thing, so you have to loosen one and push the other, and then tighten them back, and make sure you don't move it when you tighten it back, because 3 pixels of error is just like breathing on it. Okay, that was an improvement. All right, we're going to adjust one more time. Another tiny little turn. Make sure we don't overshoot. There we go. I'm going to pick star. Well, we don't have all that many candidates anymore, do we? All right, and drift. Oh, is this a cloud coming now? All right, we'll take that. Yeah, if you've got a situation where you've got clouds or interference in the sky, you can't let that be part of your data set, because those clouds will do all kinds of strange things to your star. All of those bad readings get baked into your thing. Like, look at that. So obviously this, data run is screwed. So, and yep, sure enough, that's PHD2 complaining that it's lost the star. So we're going to hit clear, and we're going to hit adjust, and we're going to wait until things get better. Well, maybe this would be a good time to have our first DJ break. Let's turn it over to DJ Nebulous and see what he's got in store for you.
Well, hello, astronomers. This is DJ Nebulous here. I'm going to play some music for you while you watch the red line. Our first selection will be a song called The Shadow by a band called Garage Mahal. This version was written up for big band.
Doesn't seem like we're having any trouble picking up stars in this neighborhood. Back here, oh, I didn't hit adjust. Well, that's crazy. Okay. And I'm going to pick a star that looks like a decent candidate. Check the exposure value. 189, 190, that's good. And drift. That's interesting. One of those spurious little mount things. Let's just try this again. Adjust is kind of like saying start over. I'm not actually going to adjust it because I don't know. Hit drift again. Maybe there's some backlash that needed to get taken out. Just letting it run for a little bit will usually get it. Okay, see, yeah, we didn't start on the origin point very well. No matter. This is the number we're concerned with right here. Of course, the closer you are, the closer it snaps into position like that. Alright, well, somehow it says we're worse. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that we're closer to the intersection of the meridian and the celestial equator. Nevertheless, it needs an adjustment. So, let's adjust. Okay, so I turned it a little bit more than the minimum that time, and drift again.
Hi, it's me, DJ Nebulous. Now I've got something for all of you in the Southern Hemisphere. Let's listen to Danilo's Descarga by Acapulco.
throwing caution to the wind here. Another tiny plus a bit adjustment. That was 2 tinies. And drift. Come on, baby.
And now, I, DJ Nebulous, will spin for you a really nice Caribbean song called Eleuthera, featuring Othello Molino on steel drum.
Alright, that's looking pretty darn good. 9 pixels. I'm going to make the tiniest possible adjustment. And then we're going to go back, set it to a 3-second sampling rate, let the graph run the entire length, and see where we are. let's go on and do the next segment. So now we're going to say that we've got this as good as we can get it. Now it's not going to stay this good, because when we make the altitude adjustment, it's going to wreck this to a certain degree. So the fact that it's not 100% perfect isn't really all that much concern. So now we're going to go adjust our altitude. So we flip that. Now we have to move the scope to a different spot in the sky. The altitude adjustment is done as close to the horizon as you can. However, you don't want to be so close to the horizon that you've got atmospheric refraction giving you a problem. Plus the fact most people don't have a super low horizon anyway. So I usually, from the way it worked out here at home, I like to go to the west. You want to be absolutely certain that when you pick your spot, you pick the same spot each time, because some of these things will go backwards on you if you're over in the east sometimes, or if you're on the west sometimes. So in order to know which knob turn makes the line go which direction, you have to be consistent. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to find something in this general area to the west. So we go to the scope control, we're in slew, and we're just going to run that thing over there. Until we're reasonably close to the horizon. Let's let it settle down. Back to here, what do we have? All right, so now we're back to our learning curve. We don't know which way we turn the altitude knob, adjusting it up or adjusting it down. We don't know way that's going to affect the line. So you have to guess and then learn. So we're on the west, and it's time to pick a star. Let's go back to 1 second, because we want to get as many readings as we can, because we know we're not going to be close on our first guess. Although if you haven't traveled much north or south since the last time you observed, chances are the deck is going to be a lot closer at the get-go than the RA is. So that looks like a decent candidate star. So we're 58 degrees off of the meridian and still 2 above and drift. Maybe we can get the quick ones out of the way. All right, those are pretty decent readings. Here comes some clouds. All right, low triple digits. Obviously, this needs an adjustment, so we're going to adjust. My mount has a knob on it. You turn it one way, it raises the mount. You turn it the other way, it lowers the mount. Which way does what doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you know to pick the right direction that will solve your problem. So I'm going to guess that if I turn this knob counterclockwise, the line will go up. And so I'm going to make that adjustment, and then we'll see if I'm right. So I turn the mount knob counterclockwise. And we're seeing whether or not that made the line go up or not. This initially does look higher than the other one. We were at about 120 pixel error before. Now we're in the 60s and 70s. I'm going to give it another small tweak in the same direction. Come on on, baby. So I'd be writing down on my little notepad right now, when adjusting the altitude, turning the altitude knob counterclockwise makes the red line go up, assuming that you're in the same part of the sky all the time. The quadrant above and to the right of the meridian, celestial equator intersection point, and then above the line and to the west. Well, looks like we could use a little more. Adjust. It's good when you see it above the line for a little bit. Okay, we're still down a little bit. Smaller adjustment, same direction. And drift. Okay, this is coming together.
Hey everyone, it's DJ Nebulous again. This time I've got an astronomically themed song. Here's Furley's Comet by Ray's Music Exchange.
Okay, so this is looking pretty good. We're 36 pixels in the same direction, so we're going to make one more adjustment, and then we're going to let it drift some more, because that's what we do here. And there was a little tiny thing, and drift. Let's see what happens now. That's looking pretty good. 1 pixel. We're going to go with that, even though we're doing the 1 second thing. This is getting way too long. So now we're going to go back. We're going to go to adjust. We're going to go back to Azimuth, which means we have to move the telescope back up to our same spot. Now, this should be reasonably close. Now we're adjusting azimuth now, left and right. This should be reasonably close, but not as good as it was before, necessarily, because the altitude adjustment has thrown this off by a little bit. I sure hope we don't have to go the other direction. Yeah, you can see right there just exactly how much you can't trust the early line. Eleven pixel error across what was that, 3 minutes? That's not a whole lot. So let's see what happens when I click on the button now. Okay, so if I don't get overrun with clouds, so we'll see what happens. It takes a couple minutes for the error to make itself known. Okay, so we are down in single digits here. We're going to call this good. And we're going to go check the altitude again for our second batch. which means moving the telescope. Go back here. We're going to go back to the horizon. Staying above the equatorial celestial equator. Yeah, that should do it. Let it settle down for a little bit. Yeah, minus 60. That seems to be about right. Somewhere between 50 and 60. Let's settle down. Let's find our star. Is that too bright? Let's find out. Yeah, 250. All right, how about this one? There we go. High 180s. Perfect. And we are going to drift and see what we get on that. Okay, I'm going to make a tiny little adjustment on the altitude. Okay, I turned that knob just as little as I could turn it and still be sure I turned it. Another adjustment. Drifting again. Another adjustment. Oh, I hope that wasn't too much. Turned a little bit more in my hand than I was hoping. No, we're not starting like that. No way. Okay, so there's obviously a million different ways that your data can get polluted, but at some point you have to say, yeah, I think this is good enough. But is it really? Well, there's a way to check. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit the adjust. We're going to put this tool away. We're going to take the telescope back up to our central point, and we're going to run the guiding assistant. The guiding assistant will measure over a fairly long period of time our guiding capabilities and then suggest some settings for PHD2, which you can either use or not use depending on what you have found works for you. All right, so here we are up in our familiar spot. And now we're going to go get up the guiding assistant tool. We're going to let it settle down here. Get back to PhD and tools. Guiding assistant is coming up now. Now, you can measure declination backlash, but this is really kind of a side project for it. What we really want to do is figure out what's going on in here. And so we're going to, it says to let it run at least 2 minutes. So we're going to choose a good star here, a non-saturated star, like that one maybe, right in the center. Oop, that actually is a little too bright. We're going to increase our exposure to 2 seconds, which is about the minimum for actual guiding. This is supposed to be as real world as possible now. Let's try that one. What's our value there? 243, 255, 207. That can probably work. Okay, let's just see how that goes. Now it says to let it go for 2 minutes. I'm going to go for 4 minutes. So we start guiding. And it's not a bad idea at this point to just let it get settled. I'm going to change the color of RA back to a blue that I can see. Something like that, perhaps. There you go. We're going to clear the graph. And let's see what we've got going here. Okay, here goes 4 minutes. Turning it over to DJ Nebulous, and let's see what happens on the other side. Here we go.
This is DJ Nebulous coming at you again. I've got a really nice song by a group called Eclipse. Good tie-in, don't you think? Here is Green Electricity.
We bring back the feeling before we were all on killing sprees. Messing up our chemistry, could it be insanity or just plain savagery? The position of the messenger, don't be mad at me. I wish I was alive to see the scene in the 70s. Isleys, JBs, Booker T's and MGs. Music like that is timeless to me. Now it moves through me vicariously. Reincarnating songs that evolve slavery. Creativity with bravery. Outside the box, generating a shock whenever Eclipse rocks. We stay on time no matter what kind of clock. We stay on your mind infinite, non-stop. Force feed your soul with jazz and hip-hop until the last note drops.
We're here to blow your mind. We will electrify. We're here to charge your soul. We're here to let you know. We're here to blow your mind. We will electrify. We're here to charge your soul. We're here to let you know.
Like the sour creams Pringles can. Green. Like the word go, cause yes I can. Green. Like spinach, like strong to the finish. Green. Like the inside of a blunt till it's done. Green. Like my eyes when they envy, with all the sins in me. That's just one of the few. Green. Like the apple hard candy kids chew. Green. Like the US monetary value. Green. Like the leaf on the album cover, the chronic. Green. Meaning the flow. Green. Meaning the grow. Green. Just like the Ethiopian flag. Green. Like financials that I wish I had. Green. Like yellow and blue, but most of it blue, cause the way that I stay so true. Green. Just like the pen I wrote with on Proposition 215, cause we the dope.
We're here to blow your mind. We will electrify. We're here to charge your soul. We're here to let you know. We're here to blow your mind. We will electrify.
Okay, so here we are. It's been over 4 minutes. What do we know? Well, the important things are up here. 0.08, 0.06, 0.1. That's really good. Anytime you're down in the 0.1s on the arc seconds, down here, polar alignment error, 0.3 arc minutes. That's good. You can take photos. So we're going to call this okay. I mean, I had to edit some stuff out, but this took me 2 hours. It works, but boy, any port in a storm. So I'm going to give a report on how accurate the Polemaster is. So I'm going to use the Polemaster, then I'm going to touch it up with drift alignment and just see what we can do with that. So thanks for watching this long video. Hope you enjoyed my music, and signing off.
Well, I hope that this video works for you and that you can now have drift align as part of your polar alignment toolkit. Now, one of the best ways to polar align is with a Polemaster camera and the software from QHY, which is very straight ahead, takes 5 minutes, and is pretty accurate. Not quite as accurate as drift alignment can be, though. So even though I have a Polemaster and I can use it, I'm going to check it by running drift align afterwards and see if I can just tweak it a little bit better, because good guiding means good photographs. So good luck. I appreciate your comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching. Carpe Noctem!